So throughout this guide, you're going to be learning how to create different styles using different letter variations in your words. So if we look at just these two words, congrats, you can see that in the first one, it's a lot more traditional, looks maybe more elegant. And this last one is, or the second one is a modern, fun example. I have also another one down here that's even more free and modern than this one. So these are two modern variations. This is a very traditional one. And of course, it gets a little bit overwhelming looking at the word as a whole, so we do have a video on that, but let's just start with a very basic idea and look at one letter from each of these words. So we're going to look at the letter S. So you can see the difference between this S, and this S. They're all completely different. They have a different look, and we're going to show you how you can easily create them using our grid. So here we have, let's see, 8 different styles of the letter S. And in the grid, or on the S page of this workbook, we actually have 18 different ways to write the letter S. So this looks like a lot, but it's not even all of them. It's not even half of them. So I wanted to show you how these grids were created so that you understand the logic behind it and so that you can create it on your own, so that if you're writing something, you don't have to always look at the grid. So we strongly encourage you, and we'll show you when we create the words in the next couple of videos, how to use the grids, how to reference them. But at some point you might want to just have in your mind the logic of how these are created so that in case you don't have access to the PDF, you can still write the letters in these different variations. Okay, so if I'm looking just at these S's, even though they're all completely unique from each other, they have some things in common. So let's just look at the first one. So each of these S's we can break down into 2 components. We have the entrance and the body of it. So for this one, the entrance is just a regular entrance stroke that comes up to the header line. So I see the exact same entrance in this one right here. Even though these 2 S's are completely different, they start the same way. Okay, let's look at the second one. So we can see that we have an entrance, but it has a loop on the top. So entrance plus a loop right here. Okay, so that's different from this one, but it's actually the same as this S and this S. Okay, so different bottoms. You can see that these 3 green ones that I just pointed out, even though they have the same starting point, they all end differently. And then for this next one, we have, it's pretty similar to the green one. We're going to have a loop at the top, but it's going to be filled in. Okay, so if you're using faux calligraphy, you can draw this loop and fill it in. If you're using brush calligraphy, you can also just make it a downstroke shade. Okay, and then you'll notice that this one is a little bit different. It doesn't have the same kind of components. So this is actually a bonus one on the S page. So you'll see a few pages have some letters that are going to be bonuses because they don't exactly fit in with the grid. Okay, so that's just a bonus that you can keep your eye out on. Okay, so then the next part, we can look at how the letter ends. So if I look just at this first one, and I'm going to use this light purple brush pen to trace over it, we see that we come in and exit. It's very simple. And that's all there is to it. So then we have this exact same one in this shape right here. So even though, yes, this one comes in a little bit further, it's the same shape. Okay, so these 2 have the same base, but different tops, making them look different as a whole. If we look at the next one, you can see that we're coming down, and instead of stopping here like we did for this one, we're going to loop through and back up. And we have the same one right here. So I hope you're getting the idea. We have the same bottoms on some of these, but they have different tops, which makes the whole entire shape look different. Okay, then for this one, we have this actually crosses back through that entrance stroke and comes through here. Same thing down here. All right, and then for this last one, we come down and in, and there's a dot right here. So this has a dot where this one just ends and that one loops through. This is just a dot, and then we exit the same way. Okay, so you can see that there's several different ways to enter the S and exit it. So let's just start with the entrance strokes, and I'm going to write them in a column right here. So the first way is just a regular entrance stroke. The second way, which actually doesn't appear in any of these examples up here, but it is in this congrats for this style, you can see right here, we're going to bring the entrance stroke up a little bit higher and then curve it that way. So it's kind of like this, but with an additional curve on the top. And then our last two entrances are this loop here and then the filled in loop. So we have entrance and a loop, and then this one is entrance, and you can either draw that loop and fill it in, or you could just draw a down shade like this if you're using a brush pen. Okay, so now let's look at how the S's end. So we have 4 different examples here. So the first way is just going to come inwards and it's just going to come in like this and exit out, so we don't have any extra loops or dots right there. The next one is the same thing, except we do have a dot here, and it exits the same way, so all of these are going to exit similarly to the entrance stroke. This one loops inward with a loop like this instead of a dot, and then lastly we have a bigger loop that crosses it back over that entrance stroke. So if we just wanted to put these together, I'm just going to pair each of these bases with this first basic entrance stroke. Okay, so I'm just going to write all of the entrance strokes first, so we have that done. Okay, and now I'm going to pair that entrance stroke with each of these bases. So the first one is just going to come in like this and exit outwards. This one comes in and has that dot. Okay, so are you getting the idea here? Like that. Okay, so this is a very organized way. So now you can see, like, this one we just built is the same as this one that we had up here. Same with this first one is the exact first one that we just built. We're just doing it in a logical way. So if I asked you to remember how to rewrite just these 8 on a different page, it would probably be kind of hard to remember all of them. But if you can do it in a very organized, logical way like we're doing here, then it's really not that hard. You only have 4 different things to remember for each entrance stroke, and each of them just have a little bit of a variation to them. And then same thing with the base, they're all the same, just with some slight variations to them. So then you could just recreate this grid on your own without having to remember all of these variations. Okay, so for this one, we're going to do the exact same thing. Start with the entrance and just build on it. So this has the same base, but looks completely different from this one above it, okay? So same thing, just going down the line. So this S that I just built right here is the S that we used in the first congrats. And then actually, if you see, this last one is the same as this right here. So your eye will start to, as you start thinking about this more and thinking of it in this grid pattern, your eye is going to start noticing these things more and more. Okay, then we have our entrance that has a loop on the top. So as we go through this guide, there are going to be some letters and some of these variations that you'll want to use for specific cases. So that word congrats, you saw we used this S, and that's because the S's that have dots, like this one I'm about to do here, are typically used in traditional lettering. So on the guide, we have all of these ones that have a dot on them. They're marked with the letter T so that you remember T is for traditional. If you're doing a traditional letter or word, you would want to use that style. Okay, so now we're on our very last type of entrance stroke. So the 2 ways you can draw it are draw your loop and fill it in, or draw your entrance and then shade it down. So it's a slightly different look. One of them, the one with the shade, is a little bit more boxy and a little bit less rounded. but same idea. And then we're just going to combine it. Okay, so every single letter has two different components to it. It will have an entrance, or shape number 1, and then shape number 2, which is how it ends. And depending on how many variations you have of each shape, that's when you're going to get all these different styles. So I kind of alluded to the fact that the S has some bonus ones. A couple of the letters have some bonus ones that don't exactly fit into the grid. So at the bottom of the S page, you're going to notice a style that looks a little bit more basic, like this, and then this style. So it's kind of detailed right here, but you can see the difference between these two is that for this one, we have shading more on the two loops, whereas this one, the shading goes here. So you'll be able to tell a little bit better on that worksheet. But for some of them, we just wanted to let you know that there are some variations that don't exactly fit nicely into this grid, but we still wanted you to be able to use them. Okay, so that's the deep dive on how to build this grid. So you can we have a whole page that's create your own variations. So if you pick a letter and you want to try creating your own grid, you can go ahead and do that. But this is how every single letter was formed. We thought of all of the ways that you could start it, all of the ways you could end it, and put it together in a nice grid. And like I said, even though I just said it's all of the ways, it's really, the possibilities are endless. These are just some common ways that we wanted to show you of how to start and end each letter. But if you had a different idea in mind, then you can go for it and experiment on your own. Okay, so this is meant to be a starting point, and in the next couple of videos, we'll talk more about how you can incorporate the individual letters into a word as a whole.